started. And Kendall, production side, how you feeling?
And just give me one more minute. I'm just pulling up the agenda, so just give me one.
Yep, no problem, Josh. We've got it recording, so we're good when you guys are.
Excellent.
All right, I just pulled up the agenda. Sorry about that, everyone. And can you all hear me okay?
Definitely, no worries. People were still coming in, so I think it's all good. I can hear you well.
Great. Okay, well then let's go ahead and get started. So welcome everyone to the Bayshore Bikeway Working Group, Wednesday, October 13th. Let's see, I'll just go ahead and read off the meeting announcement. The meeting is conducted virtually in accordance with Governor Newsom's state of emergency declaration regarding the COVID-19 outbreak, Government Code Section 54953E, Assembly Bill 361, and the guidance gatherings issued by the California Department of Public Health. Bayshore Bikeway working group members will primarily participate in the meeting virtually. And then when in person, which I don't think anyone is in person besides Sandex staff, practicing social distancing from remote locations. And so just pulling up the agenda, looks like the first item, besides welcome and introductions, is approval of the meeting minutes. And staff, did you want to read that off? Or does anything need to be done there?
I think welcome and introductions would be good for members of the group, if you don't mind.
Oh, yes. So actually, let's start with that. Let's start with giving a round of introductions. So I'll put it over to, do we have our vice chair? We'll start with the vice chair if we have a moment. I'll start with myself. My name is Councilmember Marcus Bush with the City of National City, and I'm chair of Bayshore Bikeway Working Group. So I will popcorn it over to our vice chair. Oh, nice. I like the picture, Josh. That's a throwback from our my Sandag days. So.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, sorry. You didn't get the timing right on the vice chair's intro. This is the staff lead intro. Apologies, Councilmember Leyva Gonzalez. I will introduce myself since I am new and not Linda or Stephen Vance, but I am in Stephen Vance's office, which feels appropriate. I've presented to this group before about data evaluation and monitoring, and I will mention that a big part of the reason that I do that at Sandag is because of this picture with our chair, Marcus Bush, who interned along with me, and we went out and he brought me on board to help with some of the bike and pedestrian encounters in the region. And so this feels quite appropriate personally and professionally to be working with Marcus again in this new capacity. So if you don't mind skipping back one slide, although I do love looking at that slide. Thanks all.
Great one. All right, so with that, then we'll go ahead and Vice Chair Leyva Gonzalez, do you want to introduce yourself and popcorn it over to someone?
Thank you very much, Chair Bush. My name is Matthew Leyva Gonzalez, the City of Imperial Beach, District 4, and I'll kettle corn it over to Councilwoman Galvez.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jill Galvez, council member, Chula Vista Northwest District 2, which is the bayfront to the 805 L Street North to National City. Good to see you all. I'm supposed to popcorn.
Yeah.
Can you over there, Marcus? I don't know what's on the call. I can't see.
I'll go ahead and popcorn it over to see Andy Henshaw. Popcorn over to him.
Thank you, Chair Bush. Andy Henshaw, Executive Director with the San Diego County Bicycle Coalition and longtime member of this working group and a very frequent rider and fan of the Bayshore Bikeway. It's good to be here. And I apologize, I'll be Zoom hopping a little bit with a conflicting meeting, but I'll be in and out a little bit on an item. Thank you.
From City of Coronado, I see Council Member Donovan joining us.
Yeah, hi, good afternoon. Mike Donovan from Coronado.
Thank you. And then who else do we have? I see Port Commissioner Sandy Naranjo representing the port. So Commissioner Naranjo, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Hi, everyone. I'm Port Commissioner Sandy Naranjo, representing the City of National City on the Port of San Diego, which covers over 34 miles of Thailand of our bay. And I pass it back to you, Chair.
Thank you. And then Josh, who else do we have on our in the working group members that I missed or that we missed?
Mike Wywoody, I'm the public member and was also a member when I was on the Coronado City Council.
Former council member. Good to see you, Mike. All right, anyone else?
I don't think so. Thanks, Mike. It's too slow on that.
All right, hearing nothing else, we can go ahead and move over to item number 2, which is the approval of the meeting minutes. So yeah, and these are the meeting minutes from April 28th, 2021. So does anyone have any comments? Okay.
No comments. I can make a motion to approve the minutes.
All right, we have a motion. Do I hear a second?
I second the motion.
All right, a second. So a motion by Commissioner Naranjo, second by Vice Chair Leyva Gonzalez. And staff, do we want to just call to a voice vote, or how do you want to? How does staff want to do this?
Yeah, a voice vote sounds appropriate. It's a roll call.
So voice vote as far as calling, like just everyone say aye and then oppose, or like each individual?
Apologies, each individual.
Okay, got it. All right. Actually, Josh, could I get your help in calling out those names of the members present, and for the other items, if which I don't think there's any actually other action items, so I don't think this will be an issue for the rest of the meeting. But yeah, if you can go ahead and call the each individual members.
Happy to do so. Councilmember Galvez.
Aye.
Councilmember Donovan.
Donovan, aye.
Councilmember Leyva Gonzalez.
Leyva Gonzalez, aye.
Councilmember Bush.
Bush, aye.
Andy Henshaw.
Aye.
And Commissioner Naranjo.
Commissioner Naranjo, aye.
Mr. Wobede.
Why would he abstain? I wasn't present.
Why would he? I apologize. Thank you.
All right, with that, then the approval of the minutes passed with 1 abstention. So with that, we'll go ahead and move on to item number 3. Staff, do we have any public comments, communication, or member comments as well?
Not that I can see, but I open the floor with Kendall's help, please.
You currently have no public hand raises.
I just raised my hand for member comment for just a little bit. Okay, Marcus. Just as somebody who frequently rides, and this is related to a connector to the Bayshore Bikeway or an arterial sort of bike route that's on the Port Tidelands, but and someone who frequently rides both Harbor Island and Shelter Island, and wondering if we can ever, and I don't know if it's through this working group or through a follow-up meeting with the port, to learn about any possibilities to improve cycling on both Harbor Island and Shelter Island drives. They do connect with the Bayshore Bikeway, and there's not a single marking or piece of physical infrastructure on either of them, with plenty of wide lanes, particularly Harbor Island, and on street and adjacent surface parking. So as someone who personally has an interest in riding it, but also as an amenity on the Port Tidelands, I would be interested in hearing from the port if there's any possibilities or plans, or if it's ever been considered. So thank you. I just wanted to bring that up.
And just so I'm clear, so since we actually have one of our port commissioners on, what's the request for information, just so we can help Sandy out so that she can bring that back to staff if necessary?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just, perhaps learning from the port at a future meeting, or I'm happy to have a separate follow-up meeting with someone from the port and bring it back to this committee. But I would just like to learn more about, sort of why there is a lack of bike infrastructure on these islands, and then also what's possible potentially.
Okay, and Commissioner Naranjo, I see your hand up.
Yeah, and I think that'd be a great idea if we can actually bring port staff to come to this working group and do a presentation. And if anyone else has additional questions, then maybe we can have that conversation at our next working group meeting.
Thank you,
That's great.
Commissioner.
I think that's a great idea. All right, anyone else have thoughts or announcements? Commissioner Naranjo, do you have any additional thoughts or announcements?
No additional announcements for me.
Okay, got it. All right. So, and any other members wish to speak before I move on? Okay, seeing none, we can go ahead and move on to our reports, starting with item number 4. Let's see, just lost my place. Item number 4, Bayshore Bikeway signage and striping improvements in Imperial Beach. I think that is Eric Minisili that's gonna do the presentation there.
Good afternoon, commissioners. My name is Eric Minisili. I'm the Public Works Director in the City of Imperial Beach. I've got a very brief presentation here, just calling out some issues we've seen on the bikeway through our right-of-way or in our town, and maybe a potential solution or at least a response. So the issue we've seen, we've had some bicycle versus pedestrian accidents that have occurred. They seem to be occurring at locations where we've got, there's some pathways, and I won't jump to the next slide yet, but you'll see that there's some pathways that exist for pedestrians to walk near the bikeway, and where they cross seems to be where we're having that issue. The proposed solution is some new signage, yield to PEDS regulatory signage in advance of the access points that we're talking about. The next slide will show you where we're talking. Can we skip to the next slide? Thank you. This is one location. It's off of Boulevard. We've got the area to the north, above the bike path. There is an area that's been improved for pedestrians to walk around next to the bay there, and we're proposing to add a sign in each direction here. If we go to the next slide, it'll show even more clearly at the end of 13th Street. And at the end of 12th Street, there's this area to the north of the bike path again that is been improved for walking and to look at the vegetation and stuff like that. And again, issues have come up at the spots where pedestrians cross the bike path to get into those locations. And so we're proposing at these locations a couple, again, about 4 signs. You can see in blue is the little signage thing that I put on there. And that's, this is based on a recommendation by our traffic engineer, Steve Manganiello with STC Traffic. And my idea here was to just present this to the working group, see if there's any issues, concerns, but we'd like to do something that's be pretty quickly and easily done. And we can handle that ourselves in-house here at Imperial Beach if we get kind of a thumbs up from this group. With that, I'm ready to answer any questions.
All right, thank you for the presentation, and I'll go ahead and kick it off over to Vice Chair Leyva Gonzalez, since this is his district.
Thank you very much, Eric, for that great presentation. Just to give a little bit of background, this is an attempt because of accident that occurred in the latter portion of July. Between a individual that was on a motorized bike who ran into individual that was on the path that was walking, and it was a pretty serious accident. So the city of Imperial Beach feels it's our responsibility to try to address and make this particular section as safe as possible. This is just one of a beginning of attempts to make it safer, not only for people that are walking on the bike path, but individuals that are riding their bikes as well. So that's all I pretty much had to say. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And I see a couple hands up. I see, before I get to you, Councilmember Donovan, I see staff Matt has his hand up. So Matt.
Hi, everyone. I just wanted to make one quick comment. Eric, thanks for sharing that. I think it would be good to consider putting the shark's teeth yield marking paint on the ground next to the sign that you're proposing. That way it would be more enforceable if you had a future crash similar to what happened. That bike, it would be easier to hold the biker responsible and liable for that. Just a thought.
I agree.
All right, Councilmember Donovan, and then we'll have Mr. Wywoody.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to mention that we in Coronado have had similar concerns that have been brought up by Imperial Beach and Eric. In the last couple of meetings, we had proposed some signage that would be painted on the surface of the bikeway rather than having signs. I'm not sure what IB has in mind, but I would ask you to contact our active transportation planner, whose name is Howard Lee. And we had the signs all designed. I don't know if we've installed them or painted them on yet, but Howard would be able to share what the work that he's done and let you know the status of where we are on that. But it's a very valid concern. We had one accident in particular on our portion of the bikeway that actually the person died. He got hit, knocked off his bike, hit his head, and the next day he passed away. So this is serious business. So I applaud Imperial Beach for pursuing this, but don't reinvent the wheel. You know, let us share with you the work that's already been done in this area.
That sounds great. I have some contacts up in Coronado. I'll be happy to contact Mr. Lee.
Thanks, Eric.
All right, and then next, Mr. Wywoody. And you're on mute, sir.
I'm wondering if there's a companion sign for the pedestrians, watch for bicycles, because I ride that section frequently. In fact, I just did this morning, and it happens fast. And if the pedestrians aren't looking, the fact that you're holding the bicyclist liable is not going to solve the problem. It's not going to prevent the accident. So I'd like to see some warning to the pedestrians to watch for bicycles on the perpendicular intersection.
And does staff have a response to that?
We're happy to add more sign. I mean, I think we want to avoid, I mean, I guess I'm interested in hearing about the potential to maybe paint these into the ground, at least maybe on the bikeway side, because I don't think anybody wants to see a lot of signposts all around it, every intersection down there. But, you know, if that's what needs to happen, we could pursue that as well.
Great. And then we also have, if Sandig staff can, looks like promote Howard Lee, the staff from the city of Coronado is available to speak.
Hi, Howard Lee, City of Coronado, active transportation planner. So I'm working on the stenciling in the Coronado segments of the bikeway. So we're currently working on a bid package to prepare the stenciling for installation. So that's where we're at in the process. I would be happy to work with Imperial Beach to kind of coordinate that, to see if there's anything that we could do in terms of consistency in design or just sharing resources in some way. I think that'd be a good idea.
That'd be great.
Okay, great. Does anyone else have any other questions? Any of our members, working group members? And what about any members of the public that wish to speak on this item? Do we have any staff? Oh, I see Matt's hand up. So go ahead, Matt.
Hi, thanks for this great discussion. I thought I would just share some additional thoughts. For the pedestrians, typically what we do when we design these bikeways is we would put truncated domes on either side. So to alert the pedestrians that they're entering a space that's not pedestrian only, you know, that there's vehicles, in this case, it's bikes that will move through that space. So to warn them as they're crossing the bikeway. Thanks.
Great. Does that, and for Councilmember Leyva Gonzalez and Councilmember Donovan, did that kind of address Matt's thoughts there? Does that address that?
Yes, and we really do appreciate all of the feedback. Obviously, this is a work in progress, so one attempt is not going to solve any of the solutions. Any of the issues, but this is we're doing our due diligence to try to address it. And if we need to do additional, then so be it, we will. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Donovan.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I got a text from one of our residents who would like to make comments, but he doesn't seem to be able to get in. So I don't know if there's a way. His name is Phil Monroe. Is there any way our admin can allow him to make a comment?
Yes, we have two hands up from the public, Phil Monroe and Stephen Vance.
I think I just got muted.
Yep, we see Mr. Monroe. So go ahead, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you.
Not 2 minutes, but I also sent you a picture. I was on the bike path up in Mountain View, and they had signs that essentially told people to announce their presence and pass on the left. With the electric bikes now going by so often, and I tell you that is getting to be very important. I would at least suggest we take a look at that. I sent Mike pictures of that, as well as I think Marcus, you got them or somebody else got them that I sent over there. The pictures, I found them very helpful, and most people were announcing themselves and they were passing on the left.
Great, and then I see Mr. Stephen Vance. I think I saw his hand up too. Is it another member public?
Yeah. Yes. Thank you. And thank you for addressing this issue. A friend of mine a few months ago was involved in a bike and pedestrian crash, and so it's I'm well aware of the problem. In fact, back when I was working at Sandag, this was an issue 5 years ago, and I applaud Imperial Beach for taking action to solve these, to address the crossing issue, but it's also an overtaking issue with people colliding with people on bikes and people walking along the trail. And ultimately, I think the only real solution is to bite the bullet and provide separate bike and pedestrian travelways along as much of the corridor as possible. I know there are some constraints in Imperial Beach where they're right along the water there, but as much as possible, I would encourage you to think long-term and work towards ultimately providing separate walkways so that we can avoid these conflicts. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Stephen. And the staff can confirm there's no other public speakers before we move on to the next item?
I can confirm.
All right, thank you, Josh. Let's go ahead on next item, which is also Imperial Beach related to. It's the Resiliency Project. Item number 5.
I will Good afternoon, Chair and board members. My name is Chris Hallmeyer with the City of Imperial Beach, and this is another exciting project that we have here in our city. And we have grant funds from the Ocean Protection Council to really do a sea level rise planning grant to look at the Imperial Beach section of the Bayshore Bikeway. We're calling it the Bayshore Bikeway Resiliency Project. And we're looking at our 1.2 mile section of bikeway and re-envisioning what we can do along the bikeway, including all the public parcels along that section to really make us more resilient to coastal flooding, address some of the existing stormwater flooding issues, to really encourage redevelopment of some of the sections there, and really to address some, all the issues of what would you want Imperial Beach section of the bikeway to look like in the future. So with that, I'm really going to introduce Dennis Larson, who is kind of leading some of our outreach efforts here. So Dennis, I'm going to let you lead this presentation.
Sounds good. Thank you, Chris. Hey, Danny, do you mind if I share? We talked yesterday about I would share my screen and show the PowerPoint I have. We made a couple adjustments. Great, thank you. All right, so once again, thank you, Chris, for the introduction, and thank you everyone for taking the time to listen to this project. I'm going to give the presentation today. My name is Dennis Larson. I'm the principal planner with Nexus Planning and Research. With me today is Brian Leslie. He's the senior coastal engineer with GHD. So I'll be talking to him kind of about the project, the orientation to the project, and then he will discuss the proposed concepts at this point. Once again, this is the Bayshore Bikeway Resiliency Project. This project is funded by an Ocean Protection Council grant from Prop 68. Really what it is the city of Imperial Beach is developing plans to kind of repurpose this 1.2 mile segment of the bikeway in the city of Imperial Beach. One thing I want to point out here is that while this project is called the Bayshore Bikeway Resiliency Project, it isn't just about the bikeway. The bikeway into itself is actually the first line of defense to the Bayside neighborhood behind it. So as we make improvements to the bikeway, we're looking to implement both protection and accommodation measures to protect against flooding from projected sea level rise. It's about flood protection for the bikeway and the adjacent community. We also look at this, and this discussion we just had previously about safety on the bikeway is also somewhat addressed in this. And so what we want to do is improve coastal access, but also make that safer. At the same time, we also think we can strengthen the ecosystem resilience adjacent to the bikeway. Finally, this type of project, because it is going to activate this area adjacent to the bikeway, does provide opportunities for additional recreational activation as well as commercial activation. So this project, as you're most of you familiar with, it is the area that is the Bayshore Bikeway in front of the city of Imperial Beach. What I do want to point out is there is a segment here that is in the city of Coronado. That's because the adaptation strategies that we want to provide, it's actually necessary to look at the areas next to us. So an important thing here is that as we move into this kind of implementation of sea level rise adaptation strategies, we're moving away from the vulnerability assessments. So you have the city of Imperial Beach that has their own sea level rise vulnerability assessment. The city of Coronado is working through theirs right now. Typically you're doing those somewhat in a vacuum, but as we move into, and that's actually normal, there's nothing wrong with that. As we move into implementation, it gets a little bit more complex because you need to consider the agencies adjacent to you, but also those agencies that have management areas around you. And so prior to us meeting with you, we have met with City of Coronado and San Diego, the Port of San Diego, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, SANDAG, planners. We're meeting with planners and engineers to give an idea of what we're proposing because we need everyone to be on board. And part of that is to understand the underlying management authorities. So for example, in this area, the city of Imperial Beach has authority over their area, but most of the ponds they used to be State Lands Commission, and with SB 507, they've been transferred to the Port of San Diego, but they've also those areas are leased to U.S. Fish and Wildlife. At the same time, there are areas that MTS, through the San Diego Arizona Railroad, they own the underlying property, but they've given an encroachment permit to the city of Imperial Beach. So there's a little bit of complexity about who has management authority, who has permitting authority, but we're bringing those people along board right now so we understand what are the constraints and who needs to be involved. One thing I want to point out is that if you look at the image, there's SR 75, and that's really the dividing line of the Bayside neighborhood. This is considered a disadvantaged neighborhood. It's also a very low-lying neighborhood that is prone to existing flooding from just sea level rise, or not sea level rise, but just bay elevations at this point. what's going to happen as I talk through this further is that we're going to talk about the existing flooding conditions, and then Brian will talk about the strategies per each segment. So one thing here is that there's already flooding that occurs. What you're seeing right here, this is actually that red segment over that's from kind of 7th Street up to SR 75. This is standard flooding that's happened during king tides. And the way that the city of Imperial Beach is addressing it right now is a temporary sandbag. So here's the thing, we have an issue now for this area. Looking at the projected sea level rise, you'll see that there's 3 colors here. There's a lighter blue, a medium blue, and a darker blue. The lighter blue is the flooding that occurs right now. So you can see in the 7th Street corridor near Basswood, sea levels are rising within the bay, or they raise up in the bay and actually back up into the existing storm drain. And so one thing I want to point out with this project is that we are looking at measures to stop the water from coming into the community and stop it from going onto the bikeway, but we're also making improvements to the storm drain to actually accommodate some of this water and some of this flooding, some of this water coming in, and actually do some controlled flooding measures. But we can see from this, just looking in the future, we're talking for Imperial Beach, it's different than other areas in the bay. They're going to be impacted like in 2040. So when you look at other cities in San Diego County, sometimes they're not affected till, or projected to be affected until 2070 or 2100. But for Imperial Beach, it's really like we're looking at near-term and mid-term solutions. Just going back to the project schedule, this is something that it's an 18-month project. We started this in May of 2021 of this year. It runs through October of 2022. Under the grant, we are looking to get to 30% engineering design. So it's basically pre-CEQA before this becomes a project. We've already done the data collection. Right now we're doing this constraints analysis. The idea was, let's go and do the data collection. We have a better understanding of what's going on in this area, engage with the agencies. So we've been talking to US Fish and Wildlife, talking to the port, talking to the different cities. And so many of you on this call we've already talked to, which is really nice. And so now we're doing the constraints analysis. We just held our first workshop with the public. We have a website, we've been doing surveys, we've been engaging with the public, engaging with the agencies. The next step is actually to develop project alternatives. The idea being that we want to present those project alternatives to the public probably early February. We'll get their feedback, narrow those down to one project that will take forward to 30% design. What I want to say with this is that this project is really relatively at the beginning of it. So what we are showing you and what Brian's going to walk you through are concepts that we think are the best at kind of sea level rise adaptation strategies to reduce flooding in this area, but they may switch. We may have to mix those up a little bit because we haven't gotten into the detail just yet. It also means that from kind of an engagement standpoint, there are numerous opportunities looking forward for the public and for agencies to be engaged. And Imperial Beach is being very proactive about engaging those agencies and the public, and specifically the residents in this neighborhood, in the Bayside neighborhood. The other thing I want to point out is that for this kind of approach to planning for the city of Imperial Beach, this is kind of the second step. The first one being they have the general plan, they're currently updating their local coastal program, they've already done the sea level rise vulnerability assessment. Now it's doing this kind of implementation project. The third phase for this specific project is to look for larger funding, and right now we're actually pursuing FEMA's BRIC funding, which is the Federal Emergency Management Agency's building resilient infrastructure in communities. One big piece of this that OPC was very excited about is that we're doing a lessons learned document at the end of this. I think many of you maybe heard about the lessons learned document. The key here is that we want to be able to share the information we have with other people within the region along the state. And probably the biggest sharing mechanism is how we do the outreach, but also how we do the interagency coordination to move a project like this forward. Because the reality is we probably have 8 or 10 different agencies that need to weigh in on the strategies that we come up with. So it gets complex, but it's where we're at. So Imperial Beach is out front and trying to implement this type of complex project. And there's a lot to learn and a lot to share. In terms of the development footprint, this is broken up into 5 segments. This is a 1.2 mile reach. It's essentially about a quarter mile segment for each one. The segments fell into this case because of the topography, the general geography, but also the type of strategy that needs to be employed. So what's going to happen is that I'm going to set you up the orientation, then Brian will go back and forth where Brian will talk about the type of strategy that we tend to employ for each area. So segment 1, this is the area where segment 1A is in the city of Coronado. We've been coordinating with the city of Coronado with Howard, who's on the phone right now. And then segment 1B is in the city of Imperial Beach. So segment 1A is in the photos. You can see number 1, this is really looking east to west towards State Route 75. There's a drainage channel that, that is close to where the 1A is in segment, and Brian's going to talk about that. And then running segment 1B, running north to south, is for the community, they refer to it as the Flamingo Trail. So that's just to orient you, and I'm going to pass it over to Brian, who's going to talk about the different strategies for this area.
Great. Well, thanks, Dennis. Yeah, in segment 1, what we're looking at is really flood protection against segment 1B. This is the western edge of the Bayshore, the Bayside community along the Flamingo Trail. So we'll be looking to repurpose the Flamingo Trail into a living levee. So the idea here is to have kind of a traditional engineered levee that has like this clay layer, kind of serves as flood protection, but also has this multi-purpose of having a gentler slope such that habitats can exist and kind of transgress over time as water levels increase. So you kind of have like just a traditional levee, but a much flatter slope that's planted with native habitat. They talk about Ecotone Slope, and just to explain that to everybody, it's basically, you have like wetlands on one side of the spectrum, and the other side of the spectrum is like your coastal sage scrub. So you have different elevations, and then over time, as sea levels rise, you're going to have this habitat communities will all kind of move up the slope as that happens. So you hear about us talking about living levees throughout, so I wanted to kind of explain that to you. The other piece of this segment is segment 1A. In segment 1A, we see an opportunity here, and this is after talking to different stakeholders and especially U.S. Fish and Wildlife. They presented that this segment of the bikeway actually mutes Pond 10A, and Pond 10A, Dennis, can you maybe point there for me? This area. So there's a head wall underneath the bikeway, but what that does is limit or constricts the tidal flow through to Pond 10A. So U.S. Fish and Wildlife would really like to see improved tidal connectivity here. So if we could elevate the bikeway on something like piles or like Hodges, an example like that, that would give us a huge ecological lift to this area. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife wanted to do that previously, but didn't want to get into the whole flood kind of rabbit hole that that would happen with the Bayside community. So they kind of backed away and just kind of made it kind of what it was, replaced what was there. But anyways, we see a huge potential ecological lift that could happen with an improvement to segment 1A, but that is City of Coronado land and has some things that to think through.
Great, thank you, Brian. Segment 2, this is the area that is from the Flamingo Trail, essentially over on the west, moving towards a little bit past 8th Street. As you can see, this is the existing image looking east, looking west to east from here. One thing you'll notice here, there's a separated trail. We've had this larger discussion right in the item before this about the safety on the bike path. I normally talk about it here, but I'm gonna wait towards the end because I have some few other images to show, and I can also follow up on some surveys we made with the public. So I'm just gonna go forward with that, but I will come back to the conversation. So I'll pass this back over to Brian.
In segment 2, we have sufficient room to, this is a living levee concept again, but there's a nice amount of room to work with. The separated trail is something that we want to think through, that the separated trail could be either lower, within the Ecotone Slope, or it could be adjacent to the bikeway, like kind of at grade with. Input that we're looking for from you and other stakeholders is like the geometry of these different features, and if there's any standards that you're reaching to, or to the gentleman's concept before, if there's something that like widths that would be adequate for the bikeway, or if it was improved, if we're doing this new project, what would you like to see? Those are all helpful elements for us.
And moving on to segment 3. So segment 3 is probably the most complex of the strategies which we're going to try to employ. So this includes the Bayshore Bikeway, but also includes the Bayside Elementary School. Just for orientation, if you're not familiar, both images 1 and 2 are taken at the same spot, where the first image, you're looking north towards the U.S. Fish and Wildlife. You can see the naturalized DG path. than a pedestrian bridge that they have built. If you turn around, you're looking back at the Bayside Elementary School, the actual ball fields. And then here is actually, you see the storm drain. This is one of the primary storm drains that flows out of this neighborhood from Imperial Beach. One thing that I'd like you to notice, you can see in the image, is that it's where the high water mark is on here, that it's roughly 80 or 90% near the top of the storm drain. So this is without projected sea level rise. This is how high the water is coming back in and backing up the storm drain. So I'll pass this back over to Brian to talk about the strategy.
Yep, thanks, Dennis. So in this segment, we're proposing a number of stormwater improvements to the Bayside Elementary School property. The goal is to really improve the capacity of the storm drain system. This is one of the biggest stormwater basins within the city, and it's known to be undersized. And undersized means that the water, when it rains, doesn't make it out, which floods a community. But also, as Dennis mentioned, during high tide events and the low elevation of the pipe and how flat it is, that tidal water makes it back up into the community. And you see it kind of popping up in these various locations. You kind of actually see in a little pocket of that ball field, a little like wetland pickleweed strand. So it's, but you also see like this kind of sunny day flooding that happens within the community as a result. So our concept is to repurpose the fields in two ways, to both kind of drop elevations of both things to make tidal marsh and wetland in a zone where these kind of undeveloped parcels exist. And the other idea is to take the existing recreational fields and make a detention basin out of it. So it's kind of a multi-purpose detention basin, which exists in different places. And it's kind of a newish idea, but you basically, everything drops and you have kind of earthen slopes up. So during rain events, the detention basin recreational field would be ponded or wet. But during most times, except for those maybe 10 days a year, it's dry and used like it is today. Also within this concept, we show a jog within the Bayshore Bikeway, and it kind of comes back. It's hard to see its existing alignment, but I think everyone on the call knows where it is. But it kind of takes a little jog and where people can maybe enjoy the marsh and wetland, like maybe the interpretive panels come in or some sort of overlook and things like this. But very cartoon at this point, and appreciate any input.
Thanks, Brian. One thing I do want to point out is that for the designs that we're looking at for the Bayshore Bikeway, with the exception of this area, it's looking to all stay in the same place and really be elevated. There might be some areas where we move it slightly if we try to separate out paths for pedestrians, but this is really the only area that we're actually exploring the idea of actually essentially like relocating the path and moving it inward. So for segment 4, this is running from the elementary school along 10th Street around about 12th Street. The image to your left is taken on the pathway looking west to east. To your right is the City of Imperial Beach's Public Works building, and then this white building in the back is a commercial development. The other image to the far right, that's actually looking east to west, and what you're seeing is like commercial development. So Brian will talk about what's proposed for this area.
There's a real pinch point within the bikeway. The bikeway is really kind of pinched against the bay and the marsh areas, wetland areas. So we're kind of reaching towards some more hardened features like flood walls and also this concept of having a kind of like a stair-stepped flood wall type approach where people can be close to the water and enjoy it, but also kind of provide that flood protection. We wanted to mention there's some conversations about the relocation of the public works yard and the commercial property, but they're very preliminary and nothing's set in stone. But there might be kind of an adaptive approach set within our study where we kind of speak to what can be done right now and kind of more of these hardened structures, and then kind of some options for the future if these conversations become more real about the relocation.
And finally, segment 5, this is really about it's 12th Street to 13th Street. This is what's in front of the existing bikeway village. So I'll pass this over to Brian.
Again, the living levee with Ecotone Slope is being considered here. This is a zone that already kind of has natural meandering trails and overlooks. So we kind of have to see whether we can incorporate or integrate this into that design. The vulnerability on this side is also lower as far as sea level rise and coastal hazards. So it might not be something that needs to happen right away, but elevation would be needed over time.
Thanks, Brian. So one thing, so those are the 5 different segments that we're looking at. Those are the kind of 5 broader concepts that we're exploring in terms for sea level rise adaptation measures. One thing we've been doing is I told you we've been engaging with the public, engaging with different agencies, getting the word out about workshops we've had, about surveys we have. I want to thank people on this call from City of Coronado and Josh at Sandag and Andy Henshaw, who've been very helpful to us at getting the word out about this project. We kind of looking to expand that in the future. One of the things I want to talk about is how we are engaging with the community, because it's difficult to talk to most any community directly about sea level rise or about coastal resiliency, because it's very technical and it can be just a little bit nerdy. So what we're doing this time around is actually trying to engage them by talking to them about flooding in general. So it kind of gets it away from sea level rise. So we're asking people questions about what's your biggest concern if there is flooding in this area? Have you experienced flooding in this area? Are you concerned about flooding to the streets, damages to property, reduction in recreational areas, losses of natural habitats? So the questions we're engaging with are a little bit higher level to get their feedback about those concerns. The other thing too is that there, within this, because it is a very large project, there are opportunities to kind of activate the bikeway area. One of it is, and so this is part of the surveys, it's part of where the direction we've received from Imperial Beach is that they have always been looking towards activating this area. It's part of their strategic plan, it's part of their LCP and their general plan. So we're asking people, would you like to see more recreational areas? That's where this park at the elementary school could potentially be a joint use park so that it can be used on the weekends by people from the public. Also, do they want additional commercial activation, much like the Bikeway Village, something of that scale? That, as Brian mentioned, that could happen near the public works area. But also, what do they want in terms of educational, wildlife viewing? Do they want things like overlooks? Okay, so the final thing, which is interesting because this is related to the first conversation we had, is that one of the questions we've been asking people is, how do you feel about safety along the bikeway? And I will say this from the surveys that we've received, and we went out for Bike the Bay, we've gone out on weekends and been talking to people and doing intercept surveys. Public safety, unsurprisingly from what you heard before, is the #1 issue that comes up. And the electric bikes have triggered a lot of that. So what we have asked is what would you prefer? Do you want to keep it the same way it is? Would you like to just widen the existing path? Would you want separate paths for pedestrians, for cyclists? Overwhelming 90% of people want separate paths. So we're exploring expanding that, and then to take it. And so it's interesting to hear your comments, because everything we hear is consistent across the board, is from what Eric Minicelli was saying, and the comments from Stephen Vance and Phil Monroe, is that people would like to have it separated, but it's also coming back to, you still have to be able to get to that separated path. And so the idea is that you do want to keep the pedestrians closer to the water, the same way it's set up right now, but you have to have a way to make it safe for them to cross. And so much that, like Matt talked about, what we're going to be doing is exploring ways to make these access points, these kind of vertical access points to the bikeway, be one thing that cyclists have requested is kind of staging areas. So as a way to actually have people get off to the side so they can meet friends, meet cycling groups, they're not staying in the way, but also for pedestrians and everyone being educated by this to understand at these points, it can be textured pavements. There's ways of maybe doing paving stone, there is wayfinding. And to Stefan's point, it's also, this is something we've heard, it's we need to educate everybody coming to the bikeway. It's not just the cyclists, it's the pedestrians, it's any user there, that they're sharing this and how to be safe. And so I think, as we also had heard about, this is what you're doing for the previous project with striping and with signing is kind of step 1. I think maybe we can potentially use this project as almost like a step 2. So we take that one step further. Maybe one thing to look at, and this is maybe my recommendation for someone like Josh, is that if you're doing implementation in Imperial Beach, evaluate that to see how successful that is. And then what's the next stage to make it even safer. In this type of project, we actually kind of change the actual physical area there, and you can use some placemaking concepts and urban design concepts to make it so people, they're gathering points. So for example, I can say, hey, Josh, you want to meet me at the Flamingo Trail point on Saturday? You know exactly where that is, but you also have a place to actually meet me that's off the path, and other people can wait there as well. And that might help to make it safer. And that's what we're hearing from the public. So once again, I want to thank everyone who's been helping us spread the word, and also that I think this project, from what I'm hearing, may be beneficial as another step forward. That's what we have for the presentation. Once again, we have the website, which is ibbbayshorebikeway.com. There's surveys on there if you want to take that. If you need anyone whose constituents who want to reach out, you can contact us. It's contact@ibbbayshorebikeway.com. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. That was, wow, there's a lot there, but really appreciate the visuals and all the details of the presentation. I'll start off, kick off with questions before I turn it over to my colleagues. But if you could pull up the slide and go back to the map that showed the light blue, kind of dark, and the darker variation of blues. My question was if there was kind of a general time estimate you have for where that flooding starts to be more of a common occurrence. I don't even know what a common occurrence is. If that's like once a month. Yeah. So looking at like those darker blues, when is that projected to kind of happen more frequently, or what is the timing here that we're looking at?
Brian, is that something you can answer from based on the data?
Yep, sure. And yeah, I want to comment that this flood map is really it's rough, it's coarse. This is from Cosmos. It just assumes simple elevations and water levels from the bay. So that all that stormwater stuff that we're talking about and the backing up of water, and especially with precipitation events, is not included. So if we get 2 feet of sea level rise with a 10-year precipitation event, it's going to look completely different, if that makes sense. So it doesn't take into account the coincident events. Anyways, so that aside, this is just sea level rise on top of tides, essentially. And what we're looking at is that the light blue, the lightest blue is no sea level rise. One shade up is 3.28 feet, which is aligned with about
and the light blue is what's happening right now during king tides, right?
That I would say is correct. I don't have that exact elevation, but I think that's a safe assumption. And then the next shade up would be about mid-century predictions of pretty like medium high risk aversion sea level rise predictions. And then your 6.5, your 6 feet of sea level rise, that's your end of century 2100 sea level rise projections.
All right, no, thank you for that. And then those projections, do we know how conservative those are? Because I have heard recently, I mean, you could just turn on the TV and see that the climate change impacts, how they're happening right now and how extreme weather events are becoming more common occurrence. So like what I've been reading is that some of our projections are way off, that this is happening a lot sooner than we're anticipating. So how conservative is that model?
Yeah, this is, I would say that what I'm hearing is that the end of century projections are kind of coming down a bit, but the mid-century ones there's like more convergence around them, and that we think they're going to see them, if that makes sense. So like 6 feet is seeming like it's going to be the new prediction, new like Coastal Commission and OPC guidance is going to probably back away from that a bit, like maybe goes down to 5 or something like that, whereas the middle stays about the same.
Okay.
But yeah, the frequency and intensity of events, Marcus, yeah, absolutely, we're feeling that already.
And Marcus too, that I think what we've seen over time with the science has been, and this is getting what Brian's saying, is that there's just greater confidence in the near term, probably unsurprisingly, and there's been less confidence in the long term. But so that's why we're seeing that when we talk about like mid-century, this is like 3.5. We also say, well, also if you have a rain event on top of here, that means, like 2040, you may have those impacts. So I think that's why we're talking about, there's no way to know for sure, right? But it's almost like that's the area where we think that we're kind of addressing as a midterm solution for this would actually kind of address that 2040, 2050 timeframe.
Yeah, to Dennis's points, the flooding that happens during precipitation events now is going to get much worse with increasing water levels. So like the coincident events that I'm trying to explain are going to make things more blue because of how flat and low Imperial Beach is.
All right, so with that, I'll turn it over to any member questions. Vice Chair, did you have any questions or comments?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Chris, Dennis, Brian, you guys did an exceptional job on the PowerPoint. I appreciate it. I appreciate you guys' time and your efforts. I'm really looking forward to moving forward and really getting this project going, because I believe that this project can address the issues with some of the safety aspects of the route in some of these areas, because we all know that it'll be impossible for us to believe that pedestrians aren't going to walk on the path. So moving forward, to find a solution for both groups to coexist, to be able to enjoy the scenery and the route, I'm all for that, and I'm really looking forward to it. I appreciate your guys' efforts. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. Thank you for the feedback.
Thank you. Councilmember Donovan, did you have any thoughts from Coronado's perspective on this?
No, nothing really new. I guess just a comment, and I may not have fully understood when we were talking about storm drain systems. You know, as you guys know, I mean, the optimum storm drain system is when it's gravity drain. Sometimes you need pumps, but if you're in a high flood situation, storm drains aren't going to help, because everything drains to the ocean or the bay. So if the sea level is already high, I'm not sure how the storm system improvements are going to, help. But that's an uneducated observation, and I'm sure you guys know what you're doing.
No, it's a good point, Mike, and I wouldn't say uneducated observation, because we are looking at pump stations and flood control structures at the kind of bay side of that of the Bayside Elementary School. But yeah, so it's just kind of how long we can do what the cartoon and the concept that I presented. At some point, we're gonna have to actively manage that water.
Yeah, fair enough. Thanks.
Yeah, one thing I did want to point out is that the city of Imperial Beach is actually actively doing a pretty in-depth evaluation of their storm water system right now. So that's actually what's happened is they're actually in front of this project. So they're actually kind of wrapping it up while we're going in here. So we actually have really good detailed information about the system. So it's a very fortunate timing to have
Can I say something?
Yes, Councilmember Galvez.
Thank you. And this is probably another uneducated addition to this conversation, but it's my understanding that the actual, for lack of a better term, but pipe that goes into the ocean that takes our storm water as well as the secondary treated sewage, actually, but when it goes down into the ocean, it's going down pretty at an incline that causes gravity further out into the ocean shelf to help pull the stormwater out. That's just my little addition. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councilmember. And then, yes, Andy.
Yeah, I appreciate this presentation, and we're happy to be part of the sharing of this information. It's alarming from the reality of sea level rise, and bringing this forward is very much appreciated by the city of Imperial Beach, and looking at it and solutions now. I guess my comment is, this is not just an IB issue. It's going to affect probably every city on the bikeway at some point. And so I guess I just appreciate the work that's being done on this now, and hope that other cities are looking at this issue too.
If I can say, Andy, I really appreciate that comment. One of the reasons why we proposed this to OPC, and one reason why they liked it, is that we're trying to use it as kind of essentially a pilot project. And the pilot project is kind of a proof of concept. And part of that proof of concept is like the actual physical adaptation strategy. But as I mentioned, it's also how we all work together to make this happen. And so, many of these places are going to be managed by the different jurisdictions or by the Port of San Diego, but that means it does include other agencies, whether a formal agency or their stakeholders with a vested interest. And so I think that's one reason why for us, it's very important that we get everyone engaged and get their feedback. So everyone's comfortable with what we're doing, knowing that we can then kind of document that process and then just move to another area and do the same thing.
Yeah, and I think the same on the engineering side. If our concept could be picked up and moved to Coronado or National City where there's an issue, I think that would be, we'd love that. And that's something we talk about in our grant application.
All right, thank you, Brian. So with that, I'll go ahead. Staff, are there any members of the public who wish to speak? No?
Nope.
All right, any last questions or comments from members? No? Awesome, well, great work, Dennis, Brian, everyone involved with this. Really appreciate your hard work on this and look forward to seeing more updates, and hopefully this replicated. So thanks, appreciate it.
Thank you.
You bet. Thanks all.
All right, so moving on to item number 6. Border to Bayshore Bikeway status update.
Hi, everyone. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yep, we hear.
Okay. Hi, my name is Malay Parat. For those of you who have not met me, I am an active transportation planner at Sandak, and I am managing the Border to Bayshore segment. And next slide, please. So I will be providing a brief presentation on previously accomplished milestones and a little bit of the project overview. So this project is part of the regional bike network that was then integrated into the regional bike plan and subsequently became part of the 2013 bike early action program. And this includes the Border to Bayshore segment of the Bayshore Bikeway. And this project is roughly a 6.5 mile urban bikeway that is made up of a combination of different facilities, from a 2-way cycle track, buffered bike lanes. It includes a multi-use path, a bicycle boulevard, just to name a few. But this bikeway creates a connection from the San Isidro port of entry at the south terminus of the border with a direct connection to the Ped East for people who are crossing the border walking. And this will create a connection that basically follows the overview, not the overview, I'm sorry, the alignment of the MTS railroad track, as you can see in the image before you. And this is a pretty direct route that is, again, when we're designing or when we're planning our bikeway segments, we want them to be direct and competitive with either transit trips in this case and or vehicle trips. And this will create a direct connection from the San Isidro district into the Imperial Beach city with a direct connection, of course, to the Bayshore Bikeway, to the existing Bayshore Bikeway. Some features here as well is that we are creating a segment that is a bikeway that is separate from vehicular traffic when possible, and just creating a more safe environment for people who are biking, rolling, scooting. And then also, so as I mentioned, this project is multi-jurisdictional. It goes through the city of San Diego at the south portion, which is the San Isidro area, and then also with the city of IB. And I'll go a little bit into some recent accomplishments, but this project was also successful in securing Cycle 2 from Active Transportation Program monies, $10.2 million to build this project. And so we're happy to be able to implement this project in the region. And next slide, please. So some of this, I need to move something. So some of the recent accomplishments is since 6 months ago, I believe, when this project was last shown to this reviewing body, we had not received the sign off from the city of San Diego. We had received sign off from the city of Imperial Beach. So we now have final sign off on Mylars from both jurisdictions, city of Imperial Beach and the city of San Diego. Like I said, because this is a project that is in an urban area built out by nature, we do have some challenges, and some of those include crossing or the alignment adjacent to the MTS railroad tracks. And so we had to obtain a GO88 form sign off from the California Public Utilities Commission, or the CPUC, in addition to MTS and Caltrans. So since then, we've also received, since the last time that this project was presented to you, we received sign off from the 3 different crossings that this project presents. And currently what we have in progress is just, so the design phase is wrapped up. We got sign off from the jurisdictions and reviewing bodies that were needed. And now what we have is, that is pending, is 3 items: the Caltrans encroachment permit, the submitting paperwork to actually receive the funding for constructing the project. So that goes to the California Transportation Commission. That paperwork has been submitted. And so we are slated to receive the construction funding at their December meeting. So just a couple months ahead, and that is obviously exciting times for this project. And then in addition to that, concurrently, but in a different path, we are doing the internal SANDAG PS&E review process. So reviewing the plans, specs and specifications that have been prepared over the last couple of years for the project. And the anticipated schedule for between the end of this year and then into 2022 is we are slated to advertise for construction in the winter of this year. And the schedule for that is still being refined. And construction is slated to begin in the spring of 2022. We're looking at April. And we're slated to open to the public in as early as fall of 2025. And next slide, please. And that concludes the update that I have. I'm happy to answer any questions or listen to any comments. Thank you.
All right, thank you for the presentations and good updates. Do we have any questions from our board members? And City of San Diego is here, Councilmember Moreno, so go over to City IB, Vice Chair. Any questions or comments?
I'd like to make a couple of comments. Thank you very much, Chair Bush. This particular project is literally a block away from where I live, and it goes through my district that I represent. And I'm so very excited and looking forward to the work being done, because I've seen numerous pictures of the renderings and where it ties into 13th and IB Boulevard. That's like a main intersection in my district. And it's just, it looks great. And I'm really excited. And I'm really excited to get on my bike and go through there and meet up with Marcus at, Bikeway Village. I'm really looking forward to this being done. Those are my comments.
All right, thank you, Vice Chair. Any other members have any comments or questions? No, and staff, do we have any members of the public who wish to speak? Nope. Okay, well, with that, we can move on to item number, oh, yes, Josh. All right, it looks like we have Chris, Johnsmeyer, sorry if I mispronounced that, from Councilmember Moreno's office, wishes to speak.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Cool, yeah, you pronounced Johnsmeyer perfectly, council members, thank you. And thank you for this meeting. Councilmember regrets that she can't participate in the meeting today, but we're very excited for the progress that we're seeing on the border to Bayshore Bikeway. We toured a affordable housing project on Fire Boulevard this morning, and we mentioned that the bike path is going to come through there, and they're also very excited. And yeah, that's all I wanted to say. No questions, just thank you for the presentation, and we're very excited to see where this is going. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Appreciate Councilmember Moreno's office weighing in on this and giving those comments. And did we have Supervisor Vargas's office? I thought we had Rosa Alascuaga joining us. So I didn't know if she had comments, but in the meantime, I see former Supervisor Greg Cox. So Greg, did you want to speak on this item?
Thank you, Marcus. Just very briefly, I mean, I'm excited to hear the progress that's being made on the this, from the border to the Bayshore Bikeway connection. I would just hope that the Sandag staff would coordinate with the County of San Diego staff that received a grant earlier this year from the State Coastal Conservancy to draw a connection for the California Coastal Trail from the Bayshore Bikeway, which obviously goes all the way around the bay, but starting at 13th Street, that's probably going to be the most likely starting point to continue the coastal trail all the way down to Borderfield State Park. And I know that they're evaluating a number of different alignments. I'm sure there's going to be some overlap in regards to the border to the Bayshore Bikeway project that Sandag's working on now. And I just think it would be important to kind of coordinate with the county as they're looking at some of the conceptual locations for where the California Coastal Trail will go. Again, I'm sure there's going to be some overlap, and I'm sure there's going to be areas where it's going to kind of go off on its own, or whether it's going to go alongside Monument Road or somewhere else. Obviously, that's something that's going to be evaluated in the future. But I think the coordination between the county and Sandag and the city of San Diego is going to really be important. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor. Appreciate that. Any other, do we have any other public comments? No?
I can tell. Nope.
Okay. Well, let's move on to, I think is it item number 7? Yeah, item number 7.
Good afternoon. My name is Omar Tay. I'm the project manager for the Bayshore Bikeway segment 8B. Some of you may recall this segment is the segment just south of Palomar Street along Bay Boulevard. Some of you might remember the Saltworks facility, which is out there, the big salt mine. So this is right in front of there. It's only 0.4 of a mile starting at Palomar Street and going south. It kind of builds off of the segment 8A. It was built just to the north of Palomar Street, and we're planning to continue that. Just to kind of provide some background, we did do an environmental document for that 0.4 of a mile that was approved back in September of 2016. Since then, there are some right-of-way needs in order to complete this project, and we've been working diligently the last 4 or 5 years trying to come to terms with the property owners there. Some of it involved an agreement that included MTS, who has some interest in property down there, and the city of San Diego, as well as the private property owner, since the city of San Diego would be taking over maintenance responsibilities. Unfortunately, we weren't able to come to terms in all of our efforts. And Supervisor Cox, the former supervisor, was instrumental in trying to help facilitate that. But we have yet to be able to kind of come to terms on an agreement that would allow us to construct some of this facility on private property. So, seeing as we spent a considerable amount of time and money to try to come to terms and unable to, like I mentioned, we decided to kind of postpone this project and put it on the back burner for now. We still have the ability to strike a deal. We still have our legal resources available should things change. But as far as the design's concerned, it's kind of pegged at 50% of the final design. It's kind of halfway there. But we kind of held back just because, obviously we didn't want to go too far forward on something where we weren't going to be able to obtain the right of way. So that's kind of my report for today. I'll kind of pause there and welcome any questions or comments.
All right, thank you, Omar. Any members have questions on this update? Okay, seeing none, staff, is there any public comments on this item? No? Okay, thank you, Omar. We'll go ahead and move on to, I think it's item number 9, right? Oh, no, item number 8, got ahead. And this is for the city of Chula Vista, I think. Yeah, or no, is it? No, it's National City. It's my town, I think.
Thank you, Chair Bush. Hi, everyone. My name is Matt Capuzzi. I work with CR Associates, and we're leading the design of Bayshore Bikeway Segment 5. The city was not able, the city staff was not able to attend today, so I'm stepping in to give this brief update to everyone. So this project is federally funded. I think folks know we're working through the NEPA process. We've gotten all the technical studies for NEPA approved. We're just waiting on one final study, which is the phase 2 preliminary site assessment, where we're sampling the soils in the area to determine if there's any hazardous material in the soils. So that's been going pretty smoothly. We have a lot of coordination happening here with different agencies. So we're working through that. We're in Caltrans right away for 2 different portions of the project. We have to coordinate extensively with BNSF and CPUC because there's a lot of rail crossing coordination happening on this project as well. But overall, things are going pretty well. We're on track to finish the design up in May and hopefully get started in construction in September and finished by the end of 2023. So yeah, that's my brief update. If anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Yeah, I have a question on the specific alignment. The one right next to the marsh, has that been determined? Like, has that gone through? What was the status of the environmental review on that? Because I think there was 2 different alternatives. One was having it be more closer to the street, and the other was kind of actually almost on the marsh. So what? Yeah, what was if there was a determination? What was it there?
Yeah, so the City of National City's local coastal plan requires a 100-foot buffer from the edge of marsh for any development unless approval is obtained through California Department of Fish and Wildlife. And we've been coordinating with them extensively. They have approved us putting it down there within 100 feet of the marsh, directly next to the marsh. If we put a fence that is someone can't see through, adjacent to the bikeway. So the project team has agreed to install that fence as part of the project to gain the approval from CDFW.
Okay, so the alignment then, it's not going to be upper, like on the street level. I think that's Bay Marina Drive. It's going to be closer, lower and closer to the marsh.
Right, yeah, it's not going to be. It's only on Marina Way from Bay Marina Drive to the driveway at the Best Western. And the rest of the way, it's down below next to the marsh.
Can you repeat that?
Yes, it's only on Marina Way between Bay Marina Drive and the driveway into the Best Western, which is a few hundred feet. And then it uses that driveway and then goes down and changes the alignment to be off the street and down next to the marsh.
Got it. And do we have a cost comparative for, alternatives? Like having it on the Marina Way versus having it more closer to the marsh?
Well, the desire was always to put it down below next to the marsh, I think. That was the direction. We looked at alternatives just in case, but we didn't go and cost them out.
Got it.
Some of the alternatives would have some give and take potentially. For example, there's a wide pedestrian path that connects the Best Western Hotel down to the Pier 32, I think it's called. And that would potentially have to be changed to a bike and ped space. So yeah, it seemed like there was a strong desire from the city that keep that as a ped only space. That wide walkway that is on Marina Way. So we never really did detailed cost estimates of different alternatives.
Got it. Appreciate that. And then last question, what's the, so, okay, see the plan specification, so May of next year, that's the next big milestone?
Right, yeah. You got it.
Okay. Does anyone else have any other members have questions? No, seeing that. Oh, yes, sure.
I have a question. So Matt, you had mentioned previously about a project about the bike lane going under that bridge. Is that underneath the bridge? Is that right there at is that McKinley Avenue where it goes underneath the 5?
It goes underneath up at Harbor Drive. There's an off ramp from the 5 southbound off ramp, and it goes underneath that. I was also mentioning to you in our call yesterday that the city is trying to figure out ways. The 5 basically acts as a barrier where the Bayshore Bikeway is on the west side of the 5, and 95% of the people, maybe 100% of the people that live in National City live on the east side of the 5. So it's difficult for the people living in National City to access the Bayshore Bikeway. There's only 4 crossings of Interstate 5, and none of them have safe, bike facilities on them. So the city's actively looking at grant applications and opportunities to improve some or all of those 4 crossings to make it easier for people to safely and comfortably access the Bayshore Bikeway.
All right, thank you very much.
Yes.
All right, and Josh, do we have any public comments?
We do not.
Okay, thank you, Matt. Let's move on to the next item. So Choice Creek Bikeway status report.
So this report was going to be provided by City of San Diego staffer Everett Hauser, who mentioned that he was also attending the same city actual transportation infrastructure committee meeting and thought that the conflict might be a challenge. So I'm scanning the participants to see if Everett's raising his hand or asking to unmute, etc. But I will send him a text, and I suggest that we move on to the next item and come back to this.
Sounds good. Yeah, we can go skip and move on to item number 10. Is it number 10, the next one, or is Everett on that too?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Perfect. My name is Dinara Rusianova, and I'm systems engineer at Sandag. I'm taking over as a project manager for the past 2 weeks on Barrio Logan segment of Bayshore Bikeway projects. Next slide, please. This segment is about 2.3 miles, class 1 type of bikeway project, and it runs between 32nd Street and SR I-15 to 32nd Street and Park Boulevard. We have multiple stakeholders on this project, and it involves extensive coordination. Chris Carteret, who has been managing this project, feels, and from where I've observed, everybody has been a good partner in this project. MTS, City of San Diego, Port of San Diego, and BNSF have all been generous with their staff, and we would like to thank them for that. The design for this segment is complete. There are still few lingering comments from MTS, City of San Diego, and BNSF. We are not out of DSD yet, but we are very close. Next slide, please. We're also close on the right-of-way. We almost have an agreement with Port of San Diego, NASCO, and BNSF. Next slide, please. We requested allocation of Caltrans funding due to receive that any day soon, and we'll be placing this project out to bid then. We will have a contractor on board 100% end of January 2022, begin construction March 2022, and will be open to public sometime in 2024. Next slide, please. The construction budget for this segment is about $14.7 million. Next slide, please. And thank you for listening for the update on Barrio Logan segment of Bayshore Bikeway projects. If you have any questions, please let me know. Since I've been stepping in as a PM for the past 2 weeks only, if I can't answer them, then Chris Corrett or our designer Kirk will be there, and they're online. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Do we have any members of the group that wish to speak on this or have questions? Okay, seeing none. Josh, any members of the public?
I'm not seeing any.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Dinara. I think we can move on to the next item then. So item number 11, which I think was general updates. Are you ready to move on here on item 11, or do we want to go back to 9? Do we have Everett available?
We do not. Yeah, Everett
Okay.
confirmed that. Yeah, we won't be able to make it.
Okay, got it. So we'll skip that. So we'll just go on to item number 11. Matt?
Yes, thank you again, Chair Bush. Yeah, so I had mentioned earlier that National City is trying to enhance the connections to the Bayshore Bikeway, and they were successful in obtaining one grant for improvements to West 19th Street. Right now, West 19th Street is one way, 2 lanes eastbound, and 18th Street is 1 way, 2 lanes westbound, and they both go underneath the 5. The volumes are extremely low on both of these streets. So we're going to change 18th Street. The city is going to change 18th Street to be 2 ways, 1 lane in each direction, and close 19th Street to traffic completely, turning it into a space for bikes and peds. And I can share real quickly a little exhibit.
Great, yeah, please do.
Showing kind of what the vision is for this project. So from the grant application, we prepared a little rendering of what it looks like today, and then what the vision is for it to look like in the future. So trying to create a space that really enhances the accessibility and the safety and the comfort for people trying to access the Bayshore Bikeway, and hoping to incorporate public art along these existing walls that go beneath both the MTS tracks, which you see in the foreground here of the picture, and then Interstate 5, which you see further away in the picture. So that project's moving along nicely. We're working on the design now, working closely with Caltrans, because this is a challenging little space to make ADA work. So that's the update that I have.
Great, and I see Commissioner Nanango's hand up. So Commissioner Nanango?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I do have a question. Matt, by any chance, would you have the total of costs with you that you can share on the screen of these projects for National City?
So for the Bayshore Bikeway segment 5, the total project budget currently is $6.3 million. And then the other project, West 19th Street, is around 1.8 million, I believe. I don't have anything to share on the screen, but I have those numbers in my head. So.
Okay, yeah, and the only reason why I'm asking too is because at the port, at our board meeting last night, we just approved allocation funding for stimulus. So we received stimulus. This is we were very fortunate to receive stimulus money because last year we didn't qualify, and we did put money for specifically for National City for the balance plan and for other special projects. And so I would like to coordinate to see how we can use that funding that's immediate. And we do have a deadline from the State Lands Commission to be spent by middle of 2024. So if we could break down what could be spent and what we can accelerate so we can get this going for our communities that we do know that do not have access.
Okay, yeah, that sounds great. I would love to set up a meeting with the Director of Public Works, Roberto, and yourself, so we could talk further about that.
Perfect. Yes, and then we can include the city manager, Brad Ralston, and the mayor.
Yeah,
And
great.
our chair here, of course.
Sounds awesome. Great opportunity. I have lots of ideas of how we can spend more money in National City to make it a safer place for people walking and biking.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Appreciate the questions and the comments from Commissioner Naranjo. I just want to echo that. I think yeah, this is a great project, even though it's relatively small compared to some of the other things that we've seen today. It's linking the what we call the West Side OTNC, Old Town National City, and connecting it to the Bayshore Bikeway and really the waterfront too, because our community has been divided like so many by the I-5 freeway. And so this is reconnecting that. It's not necessarily the most ideal spot or location, right? Because underneath the going underneath the freeway, and you saw it's kind of dark. It almost has this alley feel, but that's why the staff has worked really hard to propose something that activates the space and has art and playground equipment as well. And hopefully lighting will be a big consideration too, to just make it more welcoming to cross and come into. And there has been, just so you know, Matt, there's been a couple community comments. Well, one, to be honest, one that I could think of a resident of OTNC that expressed hesitation, but for us, and we hear that, but for us on council, I think it's really important to have that connection to the Bayshore Bikeway, because the only other connection is on Mile of Cars Way of 24th Street, right by the trolley station. And if any of you are familiar with that, it's really dangerous because there's you're competing with cars. It's freeway on ramps. It's dark. It's noisy. It's polluted. It's really unsafe. And so this, I think, is a good, let's call it short or medium term project. And our long term goal is to actually have a pedestrian bridge across the I-5 connecting 24th Street trolley station to the Bayshore Bikeway, which is still in the early kind of visionary, still conceptual. But we did request funding to look at that, to start studying that as a concept, because at this point, yeah, it's just everything east of I-5 in National City is really kind of disconnected from Bayshore Bikeway. So having the pedestrian bridge across the I-5 and connecting, transit 24th Street, which is a major hub, to basically our waterfront, that's the long-term goal. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be cheap, but it's something that we think is even potentially eligible for hopefully the infrastructure funding if the Congress and at the federal level, they're able to pass that. So again, thanks, Matt. I think this is great, short, kind of medium-term project, and then we wanted to get that long-term vision in there too. So okay, and with that, Josh, did we have any other project updates?
No other project updates. I wanted to suggest for the next meeting, sorry to get ahead, but I feel like this is maybe between the two items, an update on a project related to the Bayshore Bikeway, the One Highway 1 Seaport Village redevelopment, being segment 1 of the Bayshore Bikeway. It would be very interesting and helpful if this is the appropriate time in that schedule to get an update on that project for the next meeting in April. So I was hoping to maybe get the commissioner's thoughts on that, and happy to follow up in a different channel too.
Yes, I think definitely. When's our next meeting scheduled again?
We're discussing April 2022.
April 2022. Yes, I think definitely if we from the earlier comment made to have conversation about with the port to do presentation on any questions that anyone has, if we bring port staff, and then especially that if we can bring in representatives from GAFCON, that would be great as well. So let me know how I can help, Josh.
Terrific. Thanks. Sounds good.
Yeah, so the regularly scheduled meeting is April. If we have other agenda items, or if there's updates, we can, probably do January or February, but and that actually goes to just any of my colleagues. If there's anything kind of pressing that you all want to discuss, or if you see a need for anything, I think we can accommodate that and take a look at that. But otherwise, if don't want to just set the meeting if we don't have too many items to discuss, because we want to be respectful of everyone's time and staff resources as well. I know Sandex staff has a lot going on their regional plan updates. So yeah. So with that, okay, I'll go around the horn. Did anyone else before we close? So we're not doing item number 9, but was there any other anything else that anyone had announcements on or wanted to speak about? I think I saw Howard Lee's hand up. Is that an accident? Howard Lee from City of Coronado staff. Okay, that might have been an accident. Okay, anyone else? I thought I saw hands up. Anyone else?
I certainly saw the flash of hands from Howard. So Howard, I want to make sure that I am not muting you if you wish to speak.
It sounds like he's good. And it looks like, yeah, he said it was an accident. Okay, Commissioner Naranjo.
I'm sorry, Chair. And just be clear, this is just last comments, right? Concluding comments.
Yep, yeah. Before we close the meeting.
Yeah, I just want to just do an announcement that I am so excited to announce that the Port of San Diego, we have released the draft EIR for the National City Balance Plan. This plan has been in discussion since 2003. We've been waiting for years to talk about utilizing the land use that would benefit our industrial tenants, our commercial tenants, and the community. And so the Bayshore Bikeway is part of the vision. And so I definitely encourage you all to check it out, but this is going to be an exciting change here for National City and the Port of San Diego.
All right, thank you, Commissioner. Any other comments before we close out? All right, with that, so thank you everyone for attending today. Some great information. With that, we'll go ahead and adjourn. The next Bayshore Bikeway Working Group meeting is April 2022. Thank you, Commissioner, for coordinating about with the port, the issues brought up with the port. So I do think that will be good for the next item on the agenda. And then if anyone else has any other ideas or anything else they wish to discuss, please let me know. If we need to move it up sooner than April, then we can consider that. But with that, we'll go ahead and adjourn the meeting. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Bye, everyone.